The opening part of the first chapter. The farewells had been said many years ago, so Goodluck hugged his old comrade and left without a word. He zipped the tent door closed and started along the path to his own bush tent. The waning half-moon had risen. He was glad he did not need his flashlight. Goodluck came to a fork. Straight ahead, the path led past the centre of Jackalbury Camp to the guest tents on the other side. The right branch turned up a small hill to a view of the lagoon. It was a spectacular spot at sunrise, popular with early risers. Now it would be deserted, and on a whim he climbed the short distance. The moon silvered the lagoon, making him think of the great river that downstream defined his homeland. One day he hoped to end his self-imposed exile and return with dignity. He heard a noise, rustling leaves, but there was no wind. Despite the many years since the war, his bushcraft took over, and he faded into the thick brush with no hint of shadow or silhouette. A moment later, a man appeared, walking along the main path, almost silently. He seemed to be looking for something, or for someone. He glanced up the path to the lookout, hesitated, but then continued straight. From Goodluck's position in the thicket, he couldn't see the man well, but his face was black and he was heavily built. As he moved, the moonlight caught white sneakers. Goodluck sucked in his breath, let the man pass, and then followed soundlessly. Shortly afterward, the man turned off towards the main area of the camp. Goodluck was puzzled. Was it coincidence, or had he been followed? If so, for what reason? Arriving at his tent, he saw flickering light within. He had left the storm lantern alight on the bedside table. Suspicious now, he peered around the edge of the fly-screen window so that someone inside wouldn't be able to see him. But the tent was empty. Everything seemed exactly as he had left it. Satisfied, he entered, zipped the flap door closed and got ready for bed. He was tired and tense, but long ago he had learned to sleep quickly and deeply, even under threat. About 2 hours later, he was wakened by the sound of the door zipper. In his war days, he would have been instantly alert, but he awoke momentarily confused and blinded by the beam of a strong flashlight, and it took him a few seconds to react. That was much too long. So
that's the first one. The second one, for those of you who've read any of either of the two books, you know that Kubu has a very strong affection for his parents, and he goes and visits his parents as much as possible once a week. Every Sunday he drives up to his little town called Machudi, which is where he was born. It's 50 k's north of Gaborone, and visits them. And this little piece is about one such visit. Thank you. The setup here is Kubu's been trying to phone his father, and nobody answers the cell phone at his father's house. Kubu was concerned. Wilmon's phone always waited in eager expectation. But Wilmon was nearly 70. Had he forgotten to turn it on? Had it malfunctioned? Or could the power outages in the Machudi area the previous weekend be to blame? It would not occur to Wilmon to charge it on a weekday. The traffic had been unusually light, and having time to spare, Kubu decided to check on his parents on the way to Goodluck's school. He turned off the highway towards Machudi and drove through the higgledy-piggledy patchwork of houses on small plots along the road. He drove down the main street and turned right into Hafela Drive, past the Lynchway Junior and the Molefe Senior Secondary Schools. Just after the Hungry Tummies takeaway and the Taliban haircut and car wash, he turned right into his parents' street. Driving toward their small house, Kubu saw his parents sitting on the veranda. Aha, he thought, there's time for a quick cup of tea. As he stopped in front of the house, his mother, Amantle, stood up and waved. Wilmon took longer to stand. He did not wave, but awaited Kubu's arrival at the top of the steps. Kubu extended his right hand, touching his right arm with his left hand in the traditional respectful way. Father, he said, you are looking well. David, you are welcome at my house. Wilmon greeted him in Setswana. It was the same dignified greeting Wilmot always used. Kubu turned to Amantla and kissed her on the cheek. "Mother," he said, "you too look well." He hesitated, then continued, "I can only stay a few minutes and would love a cup of tea and perhaps a biscuit. I've had a really busy day." While his mother bustled off to boil water, Kubu decided to investigate the case of the unanswered cell phone. "Father," he said quietly, "I tried phoning you several times today, but you didn't answer. I was worried. Is the phone okay?" Wilmot shrugged. "I decided to leave it off. It uses electricity, which is very expensive, and it is a lot of trouble. But Father, it's useful to keep in touch." Kubu did not mention that he paid for the electricity in any case. "We see you quite often. We do not need it," Wilmot said stubbornly. Kubu knew his father and how he treasured the phone. He thought for a while, then said, "It's broken, isn't it?" Wilmot was clearly embarrassed by the question and looked about as if trying to find somewhere to hide on the small veranda. Kubu sat silent, unrelenting. At last Wilmot grimaced and said, "You know, I always charge it on Saturday evenings." Kubu nodded. "Last Saturday we were cleaning the floor, and at 6 o'clock the sofa was in front of the plug. That is the time I charged the phone. I decided to use the plug in the bathroom instead. I put the phone on the windowsill above the toilet while I plugged the cord into the wall." He frowned. "Before I fixed the cord to the phone, your mother asked me to help move a table. When I finished, I had forgotten about the phone." His embarrassment became acute. But he sat taller in his chair and continued, "Your mother had need of the bathroom and closed the curtains of the window. The curtains knocked the phone into the toilet." Wilmot shook his head. "It was my fault. I took the phone out of the water and dried it. But I was scared to plug it in again. You cannot use electricity near water, you know." He was not looking at Kubu. Kubu managed a straight face. "Father, you made the right decision. It could have been very dangerous. I'll look at it and advise you." He stood up, leaving Wilmot to his discomfort. A few minutes later he returned and said, "Father, you did a very good job of drying the phone. I turned it on and it still works. I also plugged it in very carefully and it's charging now. Everything is fine." Wilmot broke out in a smile the likes of which Kubu rarely saw from his father. So let's just open it up if you have any questions or comments or